Hello and welcome to As Built, the podcast from Graphic Machine about architecture firms, buildings, and how both get built. I am your co-host, Patience Jones. With me is
Brian Jones,
your other co-host. Today we are talking about a pretty straightforward topic. There's no secret in the title. Is your marketing data helping you, or is it confirming your bias or biases? You probably have several. Everyone does. What is really tricky in a world filled with data? So many data fire hoses, spigots, sources. It's easy to pick and choose what you're looking at and how you're looking at it subconsciously in a way that confirms the biases you already have. And when we talk about biases, that's not a specific bias. That's any way in which you are predisposed to looking at data, the internet, life, all manner of things. If you're somebody who, quote unquote, doesn't believe in the internet, which I always think is very funny because when people are like, I don't believe in that thing that exists, like you don't have to like it, but it exists. I digress. If you don't believe that websites work, if you don't believe that anybody uses them, and you're presented with a trove of data, you are going to probably discount any data that shows that websites do in fact, quote unquote, work.
To give a concrete example, I would say if you are a person who is constantly buying advertisements for your firm in a magazine, and the data point is that the subscriber base is 35,000 people. Well, if that's your data point and that's the only thing that drives your decision, then you are inclined to continue to buy ads in that magazine. However, if you received another data point that of the 35,000 people, only 150 people viewed the ad that you put in, then that's a data point that might cause you to make a different decision. So on the one hand, if you have the data point of the number of subscribers, you're likely to continue to buy the ad. On the other hand, if you have the data point of the actual people that consumed your ad, you might not.
Right. Point being, just to make it very clear, number of subscribers just doesn't mean that any of those people open the magazine. They might never receive it. They might get it, throw it in the trash. They might get it, not pay attention to any of the content, or not pay attention to your content. And I think what your particular bias is impacts whether you ask the question, how many people engage with this content? Or besides subscribers, what are your other measures for how successful this print ad is?
I mean, I think a good way to think about this is that if you have a data point that might cause you to change a course of action, then that might be a good and useful data point.
Yeah, that's exactly the kind of data point that so often we tell ourselves, again, usually subconsciously, I don't want to know that thing.
Yeah.
Because that thing, if I knew it, I might be pushed into making a different decision, and I don't want to make a different decision for any number of reasons. I like this decision that I've made. So I'm just not going to look at that data point, or I'm not going to ask that question, or I'm not going to take one more look at one more layer below what this data on the surface is telling me.
Another useful exercise in this space that is helpful is thinking about effort for impact, meaning like the amount of effort that you put into something for the amount of impact it has for your firm or for your company. And that is where making sure that you have measurement tools in place to help you understand, okay, we put 50 hours into this project to realize this output, and it only, let's be even more tangible. Let's say we put 50 hours of work in to produce a section of our website that was devoted to a particular project type. And then we let it run for 6 months to find out that 3 people have come to that And granted, if all three people were giant projects, then it was hugely successful. But chances are, of the three people, that might not have turned into something that was very fruitful.
I think this kind of exercise, though, is exactly what, left to its own devices, reinforces biases. Because if I personally like that activity, or I've spearheaded it, or I've told everyone I think it's a good idea, I don't want data that tells me that it's not, or that it might be more effective if it were tweaked a certain way. Or I have a bias against certain data sources. I think that, I don't mean I really think this, but one could think, oh, the way that the data that we're looking at is collected, I believe that there's some percentage of error, and so I'm discounting this data by X. It's really important, before anyone gets subsumed by the fog of bias, to figure out what is it that we want out of this thing, and what are all the different ways that we could judge whether this thing is doing what it's supposed to, or is what we need to do for the business right now.
I think that's incredibly important. And I think it deserves another round on pointing it out one more time, which is like at the beginning, when you start an effort,
before you do anything,
understand by what mechanism you're going to measure, and then by what measure will it equal success. What does success look like? And what metric would represent that, and that you have it in place before it goes in any further. Because once it's in play, starting to manipulate it, that only further likely creates a likelihood of engaging in your own bias.
The so what exercise, I think, is really useful for drilling down. Example, if somebody says, well, we want to get a certain number of Instagram likes per post. So what? So that then fill in the blank. And you keep asking, so what? Or so what then? Or so what happens, until you've reached the part where there is no answer anymore after that. That's the thing that you really care about, that you really have to measure. So in the Instagram likes, maybe it's not that we care about number of likes. Maybe it's that we care about number of likes from a certain geography, from a certain demographic, that then also click through to the website and go to the contact page. Maybe that's what we care about.
Yeah.
Because fill in the blank, those people are our target prospective clients, and they're interested in contacting us, and those are the people that we need to talk to. And the more of those people, the better. That can be an easy way to separate out what your own bias, again, conscious or unconscious, is about what you're doing, from what is the real result that you want to reach, and what's the most useful way to measure that, and what's the most useful data. Once you decide what you want to measure, okay, what will tell us that? What combination of things, because it's usually a combination and not a standalone thing, what combination of things will tell us if X or Y has happened? How will we know?
It'll also, the reason we kind of bring this up is that it's important to remember that making decisions have financial impacts on your firm, and you want to hopefully keep improving and finding new avenues for connecting with people that are effective and make use of your resources in an effective way. So this is a necessary exercise to make sure that you're always kind of on top of that, and making sure that that you don't get consumed by your own worldview, that it keeps you from making those decisions.
I mean, especially generationally, it's really difficult, I think, for somebody who maybe is of a generation that was close to pre-internet to see value in a lot of the new tools. I mean, we've even heard people say, I'm not really, and seriously say, like, I'm not really sure anybody really uses websites for anything. I'm not sure they really look for information on websites, because I don't. I think being aware of like being open to there being new tools and new ways of doing things and evolving landscapes. You don't have to like them, you don't have to personally use them, but you have to at least acknowledge that your initial visceral reticence to using them is probably rooted in something other than their objective merit. And that, I think, is really what this is about, because it's your firm. You can tell yourself whatever story you want to tell yourself. You can have an all analog firm, all paper, like go off the grid, like do what you want to do. But to your point, you will have much more success more quickly and with less financial outlay and less human capital outlay, and all of your time spent chasing things that you can't measure, that aren't effective, that you're telling yourself are effective because you're feeding yourself a lot of bad data or misinterpreted data, or you're not really looking behind the curtains, you're just sort of looking at them.
Glossing over. Big takeaways.
Really just keep asking that, so what? So what? So what then? And then what? And then what? And you keep getting down into it.
And I would add to that, make sure when you start a new initiative that you set out measurement so that you can hopefully guard against this a little bit.
And measurement that's really clear so that anybody in your office or on your team who needs to look at that measurement is using the same tool and the same parameters, and you don't have person A is looking at source 1, person B is looking at source 3. You will end up with this Frankenstein's monster result that really doesn't tell you anything because it's not being measured consistently. So it's, are you doing imperial or metric? You have to decide before you start doing the measurements. Well, we are glad that you are biased toward listening to us, and we appreciate it. And we will see you next time.